Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga Night 60, and our special New Year's Eve show. Talking about 2021 and what we're going to do. And I'm now joined by a person that's really quite interesting because she's been very active in civic activities for young people and actually part of an organization called Apathy is Boring. Kataryna Patsak, how are you? Welcome to our show.
I'm good. How are you?
Very well. So thinking about 2021, and particularly what you said is that you've been involved in politics and civic activities and other things ever since elementary school. What would you do to tell people that are listening tonight in regards to sort of setting objectives if they're so interested in getting involved in society in 2021, and why that might be something worthwhile doing?
I think there's a lot of different reasons for why it's important to get involved. And I think one of the biggest, issues is the debates around democracy and about civic engagement and how that's on the decline. And I think there's really, people are upset and frustrated about a lot of things that are happening, but it feels like when people are upset and frustrated, maybe they don't have, they don't see tangible ways that they can voice this or they can make an impact about the things that are of importance to them. And to me, I think one of the ways that you can channel that are really, if you see issues and you want to improve them, then you yourself can take part in different initiatives. And it's not like once every 4 years or once every 2 years you go to a ballot box, you make a check, you decide to vote for whoever you decide to vote for, and then you just leave and then that's it. I think the bigger part of you making sure that the politicians and that are in power, that they actually do what they said they're going to do, or you hold them accountable about different opinions and topics that are of importance to you in your daily life. So that actually is impacted by what you do on a daily basis and how you hold these people accountable.
Okay, so you're talking about number one, we should be voting, but not just voting, and not doing things only every 4 years. And then you're talking about getting involved and holding people accountable. How do you hold people accountable?
Well, I think there's a variety of ways you can support organizations that are already doing this work on the ground. There's so many different organizations that, let's say, you think the environment is important, you think fair wages and labor is important. There's already organizations that are working on activism and making sure that, people receive fair wages, that the environment is protected. So one of the ways is you can literally Google that, and you can see all the different organizations that exist in Canada. You can join them, you can join their mailing list, you can make financial contributions, you can volunteer your time, you can join phone banks. So that's really a tangible way is through going there, going on the internet and finding out.
Now you're in your 30s. Your generation is considered to be apathetic and uninvolved on average, and you've part of this organization called Apathy is Boring. If the average person your age is apathetic and uninvolved, how would you motivate them to actually get involved?
Well, I think there's two sides to that. One of the sides is there is a huge, what I feel like is a huge misconception about young people being apathetic. And I think that is fairly wrong, because there are a lot of young people that are really concerned about the world and that have huge opinions about the world, various issues. And if you talk to a lot of young people, they're actually involved in volunteering. I volunteered for a city council campaign and there was a 12-year-old volunteering there. So I think if maybe you're not aware of young people that are involved and active, then maybe you just have to look for that. And Fridays for the Future and all the climate strike protests, where young people turned out en masse because they believe that the environment is worth fighting for and saving. And we're all the older people that are kind of talking down to the young people. Where are they on these issues? Are they out there protesting beside the young people? So I think it's very wrong when there's kind of a disparaging attitude against younger people. And there's a lot of young people that go turn up at protests, that turn up at strikes, that have solidarity for Indigenous movements that, are demanding a lot more from corporations to make sure that they're fair, they have fair practices. So I think it's maybe like wrong as a catch-all to say that young people don't care, because they really do. And there's a lot of really passionate young people. You just have to shine a spotlight on them.
Okay, but the statistics are that for people
yes.
under the age of 30, on average, about 20% of them vote. And for people of the age 60 plus, about 80% of them vote. And so you've got this unbelievable, almost reciprocal difference between people under 30 versus people over 60, 20% voting, 80% voting. And some people would argue, well, surprise, surprise, that politicians are catering to seniors when seniors vote and young people don't vote. So, and, other statistics that you're probably aware of, in the last election, last US election, 13% of the electorate voted for the first time. Now, some of that was new immigrants, but a lot of it was young people that voted for the first time. 80% of them voted center left. Either for progressive Republicans or for Democrats. In the 16 years ago in the US, you also had similarly a very high percentage of new voters. Between 16 years ago that elected President Barack Obama for the first time and this past election, voter turnout went down dramatically, primarily among young people and minorities. So there was something about the election 16 years ago in the United States and in last election that motivated young people and minorities to turn out. So what is it that gets people to turn out?
I think there's several things. I'm going to reference some politics from around the world because I feel like we get a lot of media and news from the US, and maybe that's an issue within Canada itself, is that our political field doesn't get the media attention within Canada that other countries do. I think one of the big things is that just the avenues for reaching youth haven't been utilized by the parties. And that's like really interesting because if you look at the US, like if you look at AOC and what she's doing and a lot of the squad and the ways that they're utilizing social media and breaking down the gaps and barriers and kind of the ivory tower the politics is, right? Like you see AOC on her Instagram and she'll kind of talk about the political process in terms that are accessible to everybody in simple English without jargon, things that are easy to understand and comprehend, because not everybody has these, not everybody has English as their first language. Not everybody is maybe, a lot of people might get turned off when you start using jargon. But when you present things in a very simple, easy to understand way, it's like, oh, this is the process. This is how things are done. And I think that knowledge is really good to renew because in Canada, we learn about civics in grade 10, grade 11, and there's like one class that's half a semester around that. And it comes from like a dry textbook. And then you just kind of go on your way. So I think a lot of young people, they are interested, they are concerned, but it's just a lot of that information isn't translated into a way that's accessible for everybody. And I think it's really important to explain to young people, this is what the municipal government is responsible for. This is what the provincial one is responsible for. This is what the federal one is responsible for, so that you understand what is done at every level and the things that are impacting you in your life. How to get involved and get engaged in that. And even myself, like I wasn't aware of certain things that you can go visit your MPP, you can book an appointment with them and you can go visit them and talk to them. And there's things like that that just aren't translated well to younger people. And I think the second end of that is that not a lot of politicians, maybe because of the lack of representation of the young people, we don't see issues that are important to us represented at the government level. And it's really frustrating because sometimes politicians make promises, like university or college fees and lowering them, and then they get into power and that doesn't happen. And it's really frustrating for young people because you go out, you vote, and then the promises that were made to you, the small amount of them, you don't see them fulfilled. So it's very frustrating. But that's why it's important to stay engaged, to get engaged and stay engaged. And I think it's it's sometimes like demoralizing to feel that your interests aren't represented and nobody's even listening to you. So it just feels like maybe young people aren't invited into this process and
Okay.
nobody really takes
So,
them seriously.
so it's New Year's Eve, and we're
Yes.
talking about getting inspired to set some objectives for the new year. How would you how would you motivate the listeners tonight to set some objectives to get inspired, to get involved in civic whatever in 2021?
Yeah. I think one of the things is really reflect on what's important to you, right? Is it the environment? Is it labor practices? Is it wages? Is it environmental protection? Is it whatever it is that's important to you? Think of that issue. Is it homelessness? That's a huge thing. Um, and then, like I mentioned, figure out what's important to you and how you can contribute to that. And everybody has unique skill sets. Everybody has unique visions. Everybody has the ability to contribute in your own way. So it doesn't have to be monetarily. If maybe you're concerned about poverty, you can go volunteer at a food bank, and then you can have an understanding of how that system works and how that can be strengthened. If you have if you maybe disagree with different policies that the government is doing, find organizations that are working against that or working towards building a better future. So it's just really reflecting on what's important to you and how you can make a contribution.
Kataryna Patsak, thank you so much for joining us tonight and motivating us of whatever age to get involved in helping to change our society to be a better place to live. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you.
Happy New Year's.
You too.